You know, I feel like I should start by asking you, Ashwin, your new feature, No Fathers in Kashmir, finally has a release date after a considerable delay due to a protracted battle with the censors. Not new for you. You've had run-ins with the censors at least twice before, during Inshallah Football and Inshallah Kashmir. The irony being, of course, that those films received national awards despite the fact that they didn't actually release. Each time that you make a new film and that you get into that conversation, do you go in with the hope that this board will have a less jaundiced view?
No, not at all. It's one of the most hopeless situations that I know in our country today, that we have a censor board to mediate between ourselves and our audiences. You know, I think the censor board should be done away with entirely, or should restrict themselves to simply certifying films and not use this as as wantonly as they do. The problem with censorship, Rajeev, is that it creates fear, hostility, suspicion, and all the negativity that we have been seeing in the aftermath of Pulwama. This is a direct result of censorship. You know, films don't create fear. Censorship creates fear. And this is something that we have to understand, you know, as a country. What happens is that when there is censorship applied, only one-sided view comes out, and demonization takes place, alienation takes place. So, our vision of Kashmiris is somebody with a mask and a stone, or someone with a gun trying to do jihad. These are the two caricatures that we are served up. Now, in the absence of a counter-narrative which perhaps says that that kid with a stone goes to school, walks the streets, has a family, a father perhaps who doesn't exist, the minute you start giving that side of the picture, which is what my film tries to do, and humanize the person with the stone, you start creating what is called empathy. And now, what we have in Kashmir today actually is a crisis of compassion. And this is a big problem, you know. We are not compassionate towards our fellow citizens in Kashmir, yet we would like them to be part of our union. And this is a big issue, you know. How can you expect people that you create caricatures out of in this manner to be a part of your country if you don't afford them the basic dignity and respect and self-respect and opportunities and choices that you have been given in the rest of the country? You know, and censorship is stopping. In fact, this is a direct result. Pulwama, I'm sorry to say this, is a direct result of censorship. What convinces a 20-year-old to put explosives in a car and drive it into a convoy? You know, understand, who is that kid? What kind of schooling did he have? What kind of family does he come from? The minute you start unfolding those backgrounds, which is never served up to us in our media and mainstream channels, or thanks to government propaganda, has been completely alienated from that truth. So this is what my film tries to do, and it tries to do it in a very gentle, tender, light-hearted way. You know, two 16-year-olds wandering about the hills, falling in love, breaking each other's hearts, and our censor board comes down on it like a ton of bricks. Like, ye kya kar diya tumne? And they don't have, the thing is, I love this because, you know, when I wrote the script, of course, I knew I was going to face this issue. I've had 2 films banned, so I was like, yeah, come on. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a movie about a kid trying to find her father, right? And it's my challenge to the censor board that, come on, babies, bring it on. What are you going to find objectionable about that? And it took them 6 months of scratching their heads. No, not 6, I beg your pardon, 9 months, you know. It's about the time that it takes to deliver a child, right? 9 months of scratching their heads to try and figure out what is it that they actually found objectionable in that. And because it took 9 months, the only thing that I can say is that they couldn't find anything objectionable, so they resorted to delay tactics. So we are sitting at the other end of 9 months with a UNA certificate, which is a certificate we deserve. And thanks to FCAT, we've actually got it. So FCAT has really performed well in this, I must say. They have done their duty, they have done due diligence, and they have upheld the Constitution and our rights, and they have spared me the agony of going to court, which is great, right? But really, 9 months?
Soni, Anshuman, the two of you play very key roles in this film. Like Ashwin said, this is the story of a teenager, of a British-Kashmiri teenager who returns to her grandparents' home in Kashmir and discovers the truth about her father. What sold you on this film?
The script. The script, Ashwin was very kind enough to, let me read the script. And it's really, when I read the script, so firstly, it was an eye-opener for me, because I thought, again, like the title says, everybody thinks they know Kashmir, and the blurb. I also thought I knew something about Kashmir, but when I read the script, it really made me understand more, and so therefore I got very excited and very inspired, because I felt this is something that must go out there.
Sure.
And I was very, very keen to be a part of it for that reason. Yeah.
With me, it was a case of wanting to work with him, because I've seen Little Terrorist.
Yeah.
I've seen his previous work, and I'm a huge fan of his work. And having done, because I've grown up on a diet of stage, I like parts which are not going down the treaded part.
Right.
So when he gracefully, his team called me and shared the script, I loved reading for parts. And he said, can you read and send it? Because I wasn't convinced that I would fit it, because it was an army major.
Right.
And I look nothing like,
what our impression
a
of
conventional,
a major is, right.
So yes, I read it. By God's grace, he liked it. And then we started filming. Honestly, the script is sacrosanct, right? It's the Bible. The moment I read the script, like Soni aunty said, it's your Bible. And this script is a story that needs to be told, for the simple reason that we all have an impression of Kashmir, and here's a filmmaker who knows the region as well as probably anyone else in the country who's in the film business, and is dishing out a cuisine here where you can actually smell the flavors and the reality of the place. So it was a complete no-brainer for me to, and also once I reached set, he just let me loose. Very rarely do you come across parts where he says, just have fun. Also, because he's an actor, I think he gets a certain amount of, he knows instinctively what works, what doesn't.
Right.
Here, every villager is an enemy and a countryman.
Where is he? Will he come back?
Ashwin, at the start of the film, you state that the Kashmir crisis has been going on since 1947, and you talk about the number of lives that have been lost since. But in the light of the recent Pulwama attacks and the Balakot strike, what message do you hope that the film will convey?
Thank you for asking me that, Rajeev. I made this film for the millennial. We have the world's youngest population in our country, okay, and that's a privilege, and it's a huge opportunity. And one of the biggest opportunities we have is the irreverence,
right?
And the fact that they have Uncle Google at their thumbnails, right? Because your generation, my generation. I'm sorry if
That's
I
right.
can count you as my
pretty
generation.
much.
Can I?
Of course.
Can I do that?
Of course you can.
So our generation, we were pretty much dished out the alleged truth. And we sort of accepted it, my baap government bol rahe to hoga, and we went along. These guys are very skeptical, The minute you start saying something to a kid, his eye is not on you, he's on his phone, he's trying to check it out. Really? Is that true? This skepticism is beautiful. And it's very important for politics. It's very important for polity to exist. So what I'm hoping that might happen in this film is that when they see a reflection of themselves in the two characters that I've created in Kashmir, they might perhaps turn around and say, hang on a second, we're not being really told the whole truth. What is happening over there? And then I hope Google comes to rescue and they start really Googling the hell out of Kashmir and finding out actually what goes on over there. The second thing that I'm hoping is going to happen is that some of them, a small core of them might even go to Kashmir, avoid the tourist areas, get into the villages, speak to the people over there and see how their counterparts, Kashmiri kids, live. Three things happened at the beginning of the 90s. And this is something really important to understand. One is economic liberalization. Two is armed insurgency in Kashmir. And three is Ayodhya. We're sitting 20, 30 years after that right now. Right? So these three things that happened together are where the two millennials have grown up.
Right.
The millennial from the rest of India and the millennial in Kashmir. Now the millennial in the rest of India grew up in a land of choices, opportunities, upward mobility. The millennial in Kashmir has grown up in a state of war with no choices, etc. But what he has had, or she has had rather, is a cause to fight for. So we have a millennial in a very troubled part of our country with contiguous borders with two extremely hostile neighbors and nuclear arms pointing at each other, and a tinderbox that we almost saw flare up in the last couple of months. And we have a millennial here in the rest of India, okay, who has had nothing but choices and opportunities. Now, which of these two are you going to count on to solve this issue? I've made this film for the millennial in the rest of India, that we are the ones with the opportunities, we are the ones blessed with the choices, please, let's open our eyes and see what is happening with our counterparts over there and start the process, address the crisis of compassion, address the process of empathy. That's who the movie's made for.
We wiped the history of our people with our own hands.
Soni, you had a role in Razi as the protagonist's mother. It was another film on the conflict, the India-Pakistan conflict, with Kashmir playing a key role in that. Razi was hugely successful. Alia has swept most of the awards this season. Another film that's been very successful is Uri, which of course is positioned as a recreation of the 2016 surgical strikes. How do all of you view the manner in which mainstream cinema tackles the Kashmir issue?
Well, I think it's exactly what Ashwin is saying. It's an offshoot of ignorance in a sense, or an offshoot of maybe not ignorance, but just one part of the narrative.
Right.
So there are many facets. I think what is very fascinating to me about Kashmir in the first place is that it has so many facets, so many layers, so many realities, and so many truths. And in a place like as complex as this, there is no one narrative.
Correct answer, sure.
So therefore, we are fed only one narrative. Hence, we see, oh God, Pakistan, of course, is the enemy. The Kashmir, the army is this really wonderful body, which is looking out for us. Agreed, it is. I agree with all those things. But there are other sides to the story, as there would be, because people are people, and they're not always perfect. So there are things which happen and which we are really not told about, and we discover along the way. It's much like in school when you learn, you go and you learn history. You're not taught about the Indian Mutiny. You're taught about all other things, the freedom struggle and war. But I found out about the mutiny much later on when I left school. So I think these are the sort of narratives which we are fed, and as a result we have a slightly lopsided view. And I think it's because cinema has to be a composite culture in our country. We have to be able to have other discourses and see it in its entirety. And I think that's only fair. Yeah.
Rajeev, Kashmir is so beautiful, right? And cinema has showcased that beauty. Be it Yashji, over the years we've seen how stunning it is.
Right.
It's also extremely tragic. So if I may say, it's beautifully tragic, right? Now, what happens is we keep showing one dimension. I have family in the army. So the army they are these courageous lot of people who are, we are in peace because of them.
Yeah.
But there is also a human side to them, right? They are living mentally in that space. Very seldom does a film try to capture that. Yeah, it's great to be a hero. We all know they are heroes.
Right.
But what are they living through? So it's imperative. We've had Border, we've had Uriel, amazing films.
Right.
I have seen them, I've enjoyed them, but it's a bit of a one-track showcasing of what they're doing there. There is a lot more.
It's a caricature. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I can interrupt.
Yeah, please.
It's a caricature, and like all caricatures, it does disservice to the reality. It does disservice to the audience who's receiving it. And I think it does great disservice to the people that you're trying to represent. Now, if you're, again, I circle back to my original idea that if you're trying to call these people as a part of your union, and you're saying that, okay, Kashmiris are ours, and ये अटूट अंग है, इसका मतलब क्या है? मतलब ज़मीन अटूट अंग है कि लोग अटूट अंग हैं, क्योंकि लोगों का तो आपने कदर ही नहीं किया ना, आपको ज़मीन चाहिए. Rhetoric for the last 70 years is about ज़मीन. It's not about people. And this is the problem, and this has to change. So, when you take a Bollywood film, for example, and I'm not going to be I'm going to be very straight up about this. I think they've done disservice to the portrayal of Kashmiris. The closest example I can tell you, is when you see an Indian being portrayed in American cinema, with his head shaking, with that funny sing-song accent, doesn't it make your blood curl?
Sure.
Now imagine the Kashmiri. Imagine the tragedy. You have these horrific incidents happening in their place, and you go there and you show these pretty hills and these men and women, their love affairs, and that odd Kashmiri who will come along is portrayed as this exotic bird. We are doing exactly the same fetishization as we would, that makes our blood curl when the British cinema used to represent Indians, like Mowgli, for instance, and such films like that in the 40s, makes your blood curl. It's like, who the hell are these people? And why the hell do they do this? See, this is the alienation we are talking about. Our cinema, independent cinema in India, has gone to the villages of UP. You know, thanks to people like Anurag, we have films like that, you know, which have been drawn out from the ground, grit and the dirt of the ground, and they brought into our cinemas. You know, now we know so much about what happens in, you know, in rural India, thanks to these kind of films. So it's a very similar process that needs to start in Kashmir, you know, particularly because of the tinderbox that we're sitting on over there. We need to start understanding lives.
Can I just say something?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I just feel that it's really, in order for things to ever improve or get better, people's problems and the tragedies that they've had to face need to be acknowledged. If you don't acknowledge it, it's like it never happened. It feels like you don't exist. And I can't even imagine the helplessness of somebody, and I'm talking about all facets, even the Kashmiri Pandits, for example. You know, nothing happened, nobody helped them or anything. So let's see in all its entirety. I feel, I'm a great believer in this phrase, truth and reconciliation. And it happened with the Germans after the Second World War. Today they have Holocaust museums because they shove it down the school kids' throat at the age of 14 onwards that they have to go and see these museums. They have to understand that this was a terrible phase in their history, and only by confronting it can they ever hope that it will never repeat again. And I feel very respectful of that sentiment, and strangely I'm also half German, so I'm half German and I'm half Kashmiri. So I've got this like connection with both these, you know, and I'm always comparing the two and thinking, you know what, we really need to change our attitude, because it's only with this change of attitude that anything can ever hope to improve.
You know, Rajeev, it's been an eye-opener for me personally as a human being also, this filming process. Because I had been to Kashmir as a teenager when I was acting with Barry John in a play, It's All About Money Honey. That's when I went. And from then to now, when I went to shoot this film, I learned so many things about the people, their food. And in hindsight, now I question, I do this to Kolkata, I do this to Bangalore. Why don't I do this more often to the northernmost region of the nation? And I myself say it's the most beautiful place, and we all say that it is the most beautiful place in the country. So there's food for thought right there, and hopefully this film will serve that purpose.
You know, I was actually going to ask that. I was going to say, what was the experience of actually making this film in Kashmir, and specifically for the two of you, what were perhaps some of the misconceptions that were broken when you actually went there and shot, or your misconceptions about what Kashmir is like today? You know, sitting in Mumbai. The narrative we're fed, or what we tend to believe. What did you discover that you didn't know?
Well, to begin with, and I've been reciting this everywhere since yesterday, all our interviews, I walked out one day on set in my costume, in between two shots, because the DOP was taking time lighting. And I had walked down the same path in my civilian clothes in the morning and had this bun pav. I'm a foodie, so I keep eating whatever. And he had made the most delicious, really warm man, really sweet man. I had a chat with him. Now when I walked out in costume as a major, the looks I got, Rajeev, the stares, and believe you me, I could feel the piercing. And suddenly the line producer, the lady who ran from behind, Anshuman, don't walk out alone. Somebody might throw something. And I was like, what? Like, really? So there was a perspective shift. Like, you don't think of such things sitting in Bombay, right? I'm wearing an Indian Army's costume in my own country. I mean, now we know in the last year and a half too, because of the stone pelting episode and the news throwing it up. It's little things like that on a human level tell you don't know so much. I mean, I read books. I have friends who are Kashmiris. I've done a film with Sanjay Suri, who's a Kashmiri. I hear so much from him. But I've always felt there's this something which is brewing inside them, and I've never quite been able to point a finger. This experience gave me some sort of perspective as to why. And it's for me to figure that out. It's for me to question myself, which is what I hope Ashwin is trying to do with, which is what he'll achieve if more people see this.
Because you see, what happens is that the average Kashmiri, again, we're back to censorship here, because the average Kashmiri's impression of what is India is manifest in the uniform this gentleman was wearing that day. You know, it's manifest in the gun that he carries, and it's manifest in the jackboots that, march up and down his street. I mean, that is India. That's all we've served up in Kashmir. We haven't really served up anything else. We haven't started interaction between school kids, for example, like Soni was trying to talk about. Nor have we called a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is sorely needed because of the gross human rights abuses that have happened in Kashmir. We need to stare these things in the face and say, right, okay, we respect the institution, but if there have been lapses, we need to acknowledge it. And out of respect for just human life and humanity, we need to say, hey, look, can we acknowledge this? Tell everyone the truth, call the perpetrators to book, and move on from here. That will do two things. One is, it will obviously reassure the average Kashmiri that, look, we are being taken seriously after all, and we're not just being brushed under the carpet. And the second thing is, the institution itself will start self-correcting, right? Now, both these things are very essential to happen, otherwise we're going to be in this conflict for the longest time. But Anshuman's example is great, because actually this is the only impression that they have. And the impression we have, and the rest of the country looking back there, is similar. I mean, it's all to do with costumes, isn't it? It's to do with the mask.
It's the visual imagery.
It's the visual, it's the mask, it's the camo, it's the gun. And that's the image, and it's the sort of martyrdom. And irony, I made the short documentary series a few months ago. Where I had this audacious idea. I took, shall I reveal this? What the? Rajeev, your show, I'm going to reveal this. Okay, I'm going to run this online shortly, so everyone can see it, right? I convinced an army officer's daughter, 3 of them actually, and 3 daughters of militants, who were both killed in Kashmir, to meet each other.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, wow, but it's real.
Right.
That's what I did. I've gone and made this series. It's going to be a short documentary series which is going to play out on YouTube, along with the release of the film, right? Let's look at who these people are.
Right.
Who are the daughters of the army officers? Who are the daughters of the militants? They're human beings.
Right.
They're not aliens.
Yeah.
Let them start talking to each other.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, can't wait to see what sort of unfolds.
Yeah.
Or how that.
First week of April.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I always feel, whenever I go to Kashmir, firstly you have this really, as an Indian, as a person who comes from the rest of India, you come there and then you feel it's very oppressive, the presence. At times it's worse, at times it's not so bad, at times it's very... So, kids over there who've grown up with this, that's for them normal. So they don't, I say, how are things? Normal. I said, what is normal? We've grown up with insurgency, so for us it's normal. We don't know any other reality. It's only when you go to the rest of India that you feel, "Arey, koi nahi hai, ye kya hai ye? Hum itne matlab where's the army?"
Exactly. I mean, if I can add to what Soni just said, when we were shooting, a kilometer away there was an encounter going on.
No, there was on the highway, remember? There was
on the highway, but you didn't come with us to Srinagar when we were doing the Srinagar schedule on the lake.
Achha.
And we were shooting all our,
But usse pehle on the highway there was one big thing.
In Panta Chowk in HMT, in outside downtown outside Srinagar, there was an encounter going on. Yeah, not even a kilometer and a half from where we were shooting.
Yeah, but that's pretty normal.
Normal.
That's normal.
क्या हो रहा है? अरे कर्फ्यू लग गया वहाँ पे. अच्छा यहाँ तो नहीं है, नहीं यहाँ नहीं है, यहाँ करो. So वहाँ पे shutters down है, यहाँ पे shutters up है. तो यहाँ पे encounter होता है, फिर वहाँ पे shutters up हो जाती हैं. ये होता है यहाँ.
I remember when I.
But it's projected in the rest of the country like पता नहीं क्या, the whole valley shut down, everything this has happened.
I remember talking to somebody, and there was somebody I wanted to meet. I'm not going to mention any names. I wanted to meet because I wanted to talk to that person, and I was told no, he's not free tomorrow because his boys are going for stone throwing. जैसे कि हम होली के लिए खेल रहे हैं, that kind of a thing.
On the agenda,
so it was like it was no. So he's busy with that because his boys are going for stone throwing, and but do you want to meet another time? And I was leaving and all that. So it was just very interesting to know that okay, fine. यहाँ पे ये सब
serious kind of it's part of it.
And also when I've been, I've been there and I've seen okay, the army is standing there very, very scarily and all that. But at the same time, it's not so. I mean, it's because it's normal for people. So they're having cigarette breaks with the army. They're chatting with them. Chai bhi pee rahe hain. Somebody's helping somebody carry a bag. So there also are those scenes, and I would say, so that's maybe the other face of it. But it's all there, and it's all very, very, very interesting.
And we get carried away by if you the Nakabandi in Bombay, say Friday night, Saturday night, people say checking. When we used to drive from the airport to Bhadarwah, there used to be 3 places when one day my bag was bakaida opened. Now it so happened that in the second check post they question you, na? What are you going for? And the driver said, film ki shoot hai, actor. So one of the army men had seen LSD.
Right.
So then he had a chat with me about the film, and he asked me, so what are you going for? So I said, just a documentary, you know. So I'm saying, we keep making such a big deal out of little nakabandis on weekends here. People are living there on a daily basis. These are things we don't think of. It's very small, but it starts hitting your subconscious over a point of time, I feel.
This is one of the difficult things to actually get right in the screenplay, which is why it took me 3 years to get it. You know, because where do you begin? You know, do you go the human rights way, in which case no one's going to come to watch the film?
Right.
Right? You try and tell a story about two kids, you know, breaking their hearts, each other's hearts, then you're not going to do disservice to Kashmir, right? You try and talk about how radical Islam is taking over the valley, whereas then replacing Sufism, that's going to throw up a whole new bunch of challenges. You know, you're going to try and represent how the armies sort of, you know, you want to talk about what's happened to the people, and inevitably you end up talking about the army, and then you have a whole Pandora's box of problems that, you know, open up over there. You know, I mean, where do you begin? You know, and that was the challenge of the screenplay, actually. So, yeah.
Soni, how did you get into the head of this woman? You, of course, play this mother whose son has been picked up and who never returns, and they wait and hope. How did you sort of put yourself in that woman's head and heart?
With quite a lot of difficulty, because probably my perception of a woman whose son is not around and she doesn't know what's happened to him is very different to what probably the reality is. So Ashvin was a great help there. Also, I saw his documentary, and you know, the women whose sons have disappeared, they're very very emotionless. I think somewhere down the line you cut out that, and he was very helpful in that aspect, because I would have been much more sentimental about it, just being a, you know, mother and thinking of my child not being there and all. I would have probably gone in a completely different direction. So I really relied on the director here, who had this experience of such you know, women having suffered this. So it was very different to what my natural reaction would have been. I would have been a wreck, but I was not a wreck. I was pretty much sort of not even, I wouldn't even say resigned. I think I would just been, deadened my heart in some way. You know.
But we also meet her many years later.
Yeah.
That's probably how she may have been early on.
Definitely early on. I mean, we would.
Right.
But somewhere down the line, you do. It's you know, like you know, it's like a breakup. You kind of. I mean, it's a silly example, but somewhere down the line, you just put that stone on your heart, and you can't keep feeling. How much can you feel? So you stop feeling at some point.
Anshuman, without giving away too much, I don't know if it's fair to say, and we've already said he's a major, the character that you play, but he is, in a sense, the bad guy of the piece.
Is he?
How did you? It's complex.
Right.
How did you view him while preparing to play him?
I'll quickly tell you a small example.
And is it easy? I mean, is it? It's easy for a viewer to say bad guy, good guy, to sort of look at it as purely as in black and white terms. But in terms of playing it,
Rajeev, when things got finalized and I was about to fly out, I have, like I said, my brother in the army. So it's something that he recited to me, and it gave me again a perspective. He said, when in the valleys we comb 10 homes in a village, there are 9 innocent homes. One out of that, we find something or somebody pops out and fires at us. But the fact is, the other 9 homes, which were innocent, have also been affected. So their anger, is that not right? Are we wrong in doing our job? There's no right and wrong here. You know, that's the first thing we need to accept. It's all very grey. So from an actor's point of view, it took me in a space which I really enjoyed, because it was new to me. And then Ashwin had written him a certain way, and I don't think he's a bad guy. He's a 26-year-old major from the Bihar regiment who's been thrown into the valley. It's the lovely conversation we had when I was doing a background work on the character. He said probably he's just got married and he hasn't had time to spend with his wife. Do you remember? So now, this is a guy who's just got married. On his wedding night, he's been called that you need to leave tonight. Now he reaches there and probably sees one of his brothers get killed, or his best friend get killed. This is the conversation me and him had. That immediately gave me perspective. I said, all right, let's Now, this is a guy who's probably studied in Patna, so he's had that sort of conditioning. He's been exposed to those kind of things. The aggression in Bihar is inbuilt in him. So don't go by the way he looks, because he can be a real pain. Yeah, when thrown in a situation like that. So my approach, my takeoff point was that. And because of the lack of time, which in this film I feel was a blessing when I see it, I didn't over prep it. I let instinct fire.
Right.
And I think that worked for this particular character. Because it's not good or bad. It's like I said previously, it's about the human element of the character. Because these are people, right? Even when they're killing. And like I keep saying, in films we do show the bravado and the machoism of army men, you know, how's the Josh, we do that. That's great, because they are all of that. But there is also a human element to them, right? And that doesn't make me, we all have grays in our life. It's all, not all black and white. And what the army is going through there, imagine walking down the street and your own countrymen looking at you the way I just narrated. It's not, I mean, you and I can't even imagine it. It's only when, and they're living that life.
It's also really scary. I mean, you never know, everybody's a potential threat to you, as it is the other way around. And so it's a very volatile situation.
I think the Hindu concept of dharma really works here very well. You know, because that is what I think is your last resort in a situation like this. It is not right to be ransacking people's homes and turning them upside down, you know, especially. And equally, it's not right not to do so. So that dilemma on the battlefield of Kurukshetra that is expressed is the dilemma of the Indian Armed Forces today in Kashmir. You know, and there are these boys out there trying to perform what is essentially their dharma. And that is what is being expressed.
And then when one car gets through, everybody says,
one car gets
where
through,
was
and everyone says, where was the
intelligence and where
were the intelligence lapses? And
but they don't realize how many are actually prevented. So that's
they're pointing fingers.
That too.
They're pointing fingers at that one incident. But what about the hundreds of army men who are standing over there, grappling with these dilemmas every day, right? Some of them maybe through the fact of the conditioning or whatever it is, excessively performing their duties, which is also human. Some of them may be underperforming, and so on and so forth. So it's not possible to say, where's the Josh? Because they are not talking about that in army messes. In army messes, if you go and talk to army men, they're not talking about where's the Josh. They're talking about these issues, you know, and they're talking about trauma. Trauma, PTSD. Soni's character, classic case of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The entire valley suffers from it, and there's one psychiatric hospital in the entire valley, right? I mean, that goes into another sort of issue about negligence. But the fact is that that's her character. It's not that she doesn't feel it. It's a way of dealing with it. I mean, I was bullied at school. I blacked out those years.
It's how you deal with it.
I've actually blacked out those years, and when I meet those guys again, I actually don't remember things that, you know, they may have done to me. And this is you just black it out. That's a human way
of dealing with
humanity. I mean, you know, your brain can't deal with those things, so you just black it out. Your circuit breaks, right? Circuit breaker. And in his character, it's the dharma, you know, and how to do it. So Kashmir is pregnant with these sort of possibilities. Really, it's dramatically, it's.
You play a key role in the film, Arshad Lone. Why was it important to be this character yourself?
Well, you know, I got into, I used to perform on stage. 1999 is the last time I performed, right, about 20 years ago. And the reason I moved to film, I didn't have any particular interest in making films, I'll be very honest. Okay? The reason I moved to film was that time there was no real career opportunity in doing theatre, right? So I said, okay, let me start. But in order to direct, I had to write screenplays. So I learned to do that. Then I learned how to direct. Then Kashmir happened to me, and I became political, and the documentary started. And I was just like, wait, hang on a second. 20 years later, I'm just like, dude, what happened? I wanted to act. And suddenly, you know, 20 years on, you know. So when I wrote this part, I said, man, it's got to be now or never. Because otherwise, this is never going to happen. And of course, you know, the stress of directing and acting.
I was going to ask, is it hard?
I'd never do it.
It's a high, I must say. You know, it's a real high, and it's not easy at all. And the responsibility is quadrupled. Actually, it's not just doubled; it's quadrupled. You know, because you have to pay attention to the other actors, and that's your first duty is towards the other actors. You know, it's not towards yourself. I think the prep really helped because, of course, I have sat with the people, the kind of people that I was meeting. But I didn't know, frankly, to be very honest with you, I didn't know who else I could trust with this part because he's such a difficult part to play. He operates on such a razor's edge of sort of what is acceptable. And he's pushing so many envelopes.
True.
You know, I mean, he's a radical fundamentalist. At the same time, he's got this whole double game going on.
Correct.
I mean, he's a very shady character. You know. Very, very dodgy, sinister character.
But also so interesting about what he was earlier on.
And what he was earlier on.
I mean, wow.
And you only get that by one word in the film, which is, he's called Jeans. Somehow that sort of evokes the whole personality.
Correct.
Right?
Or
what he may have been.
You
know, why does someone call Jeans?
Right.
Etc. But coming from that to where he's come to now, he's a sort of almost wheeler-dealer sort of character. One thing really helped actually was to give him an academic air, which I think makes him look even more sinister. And more, so he does very little. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to, I mean, I'm very expressive, as you can see. I'm sort of all over the place, right? I had to just tone it down and just do very little, you know, and just let stuff, and I really admire people who play poker, you know, because that poker face is stunning. That just one little twitch of the eyebrow just gives you, because, you know, what I wanted to do is I wanted the audience to imagine the character. Rather than me play it out for them. Because then there's nothing for the audience to do. You know, then there's nothing for them, then the audience is just being spoon-fed all the stuff. I'm like, that little twitch, and then let them bring their entire, you know, all the poker players they've seen in their lives. let them bring it to my face. You know, and my job is done. So that's basically what.
14 साल से ये खातून अपने शौहर का इंतजार कर रही है, क्या बाकी जिंदगी अपने बच्चे का इंतजार करेगी?
You know, I want to very quickly say the two things that I really enjoyed in the, or really thought were very interesting about the film was one, also how sort of the audience, it's the 16-year-old girl who is in a sense the eyes and ears of the audience, because you're sort of discovering, as she is, and I think that the device of her camera phone, and her being this photography nut who's shooting everything and taking pictures and videos is beautiful, because you're sort of discovering as she is. And the other thing was just, you know, of course it's about Kashmir, but the relationships, as I was telling you earlier, just the fact that there's such real beautiful relationships and characters that you can get invested in, even if you're not entirely familiar with the Kashmir story. The relationship between your character and your daughter-in-law, who's looking to get remarried, and that sort of nod of approval from her former mother-in-law. Can you talk about that and why that adds so many layers to the film, which is of course a political story, and it's of course about where we are as Kashmir, but it's you can also invest in the relationships and the other.
Well, let's take it one by one. So the photography in the film, for instance, so it starts off very much like Instagram photography, doesn't it? I mean, it's a bit like snapshot photography, etc. And it moves into sort of almost forensic photography when she ends up in the graves.
That's right.
So there is a whole. I mean, the photographs start giving you a journey of the character in some senses. Because she starts becoming from an Instagram photographer. She starts becoming a subjective photographer, and then goes into this entirely investigative mold. Almost becoming a photojournalist in some senses. So that was intentional. I mean, and the shots that we've chosen. The first part of it, so I gave the camera to the actor and I said, listen,
just do it.
Shoot whatever you like.
Right?
And then there's a particular scene, I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler, but there's a particular scene in which the entire journey of photography is reprised in a pretty hard way. Right? And it becomes even more emphatic because they're kind of these smiley pictures. And there's this whole violence with which the smiley pictures are sort of destroyed. I didn't want to say that, but thank you.
You didn't hear that.
Delete it. Right. So that's the one thing. As far as Soni's character is concerned and the relationship between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law, I mean, this is the sort of, this is my subversion of Ekta, I guess. It's a bit like two women who've lost, in a sense, the same thing. Don't know who else to turn to, so rather than go into each other and take support from each other, they go into a space of venting their frustration out on each other. It's a bit like what happens tragically when a couple loses a child. You know, inevitably it ends up in a breakup because of the familiarity, and because of the fact that there's no real, because of the claustrophobia of that situation, you know. And I just extrapolated that. As a screenwriter, I was trying to figure out a way of dealing with that dynamic. I mean, how would she take the fact that her daughter-in-law wants to get remarried? Now, the daughter-in-law didn't really need to arrive all the way to this little remote village to take her permission. It's not necessary, but she felt compelled in some senses to do so. You know, so that's a huge step, coming all the way from the UK to do this, and then introducing this new guy, I mean, which is another cocktail of, you know, and who's pretty much just this sort of bearish figure who's just sort of roaming around, you know, and you already know who this guy is, except every now and then sort of he's some sort of authority, but you're not quite sure what he is. And then she's like this strange man in my house, and of course she's over the moon because she has a daughter, she has a granddaughter. So she's totally mixed with that emotion as well, you know. And so the idea really was to show this family dynamic. Again, we go back to the idea of saying that, look, these are human beings with human emotions. You know? But her character and the character played by Natasha Margot in the film,
who's the daughter-in-law, Zainab?
The daughter-in-law, Zainab, I beg your pardon. Yeah, and they have this dynamic which is built on trust, suspicion.
Right.
At the same time.
That's a good way to put it,
You know, and at the same time. And it fires on both those cylinders. And you're like, these, you see, I could have made a movie on each of their stories.
That's true, actually, yes.
You know,
yes.
I could have made a movie, I beg your pardon, on my character story, a big one, you know.
Actually, very interesting.
I mean, you know, I could have made a movie on her character story for sure. On Parveena's character story, you know, played by Maya Sarao, who's done a wonderful job. And, you know, who's the mother of Majid.
Correct.
The love interest of our lead protagonist.
Of
Shivam Raina, who plays. I mean, her story is also equally fascinating, right?
Oh gosh, it's a complex. That is an incredible arc as well. I mean,
Really.
So you see,
and their relation. I mean, her relationship with. We don't want to. I mean, just the dynamic. I mean, what he catches her, the moment he catches her in, to the point there.
And also this young girl coming all the way from England who is a complete stranger to me, but she's my son's daughter. And then again, you know, that whole painful thing of, oh God, now, you know, my son is not here, but she's here. And then she doesn't know me at all. I'm so alien to her, to anything that she's experienced in her life.
And yet you have that moment where you give her a huge piece. I mean, your
that's what I'm saying. So it's it's such a real thing that you know we don't know who the other is. We are both the other to the other. And then we but there is this connection which is so deep. So it's so complicated.
They can't even communicate.
They don't even know the same language.
Exactly. That's right.
You know, one is speaking in English, the other one's answering in Kashmiri. So it's like, you know, but they communicate.
They communicate, right?
I mean,
my favorite moment in the film is between Soni Auntie's character and where the hair's been, the mother says, and then when she comes home and she looks at the photo and she says, "Acha hai" or something. So just that reaction by Zara,
it actually is very revealing.
It's magic. It's magic, isn't it? Between human beings of what we perceive and what it actually is. Therein lies the little touch, which is what makes his films, I believe, what they are.
Well, it makes Natasha's character, Zainab's character, sort of express this, again, it goes back to caricatures. She's created a caricature of this mother-in-law in her mind, so much so that she feels that it's necessary to change the way her daughter looks to present to the mother-in-law. But the mother-in-law is much more chilled out and far more progressed in her brain than that, you know. And that's that one of those.
And it's a fact with most of our parents, right? Like we think that they will not.
They surprise us.
And the grandparents are way more chilled out than the parents anyway.
Actually,
I was actually very surprised. I don't know if this is a spoiler that. She tells the grandfather, "I'm stepping out right after what has just happened in the home." It's a film that, but really, many congratulations. I think you've made a film that's very layered, and I think that there's a lot to chew on when you sort of watch the film. I really do hope it finds its audience. All the best. Congratulations on a job very well done. Looking forward to lots more, and here's hoping that you will continue to sort of steer the pot.
Thank you so much, Rajeev,
and tell the stories that need to be told. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajeev.